So I made a post on Instagram and my Facebook, kind of a Transformation Tuesday type of post. But in an effort to not have, TLDR, I decided I would make a video to kind of go along with it, just to kind of give you all a snapshot at what my past is like, as far as in the health and fitness space and where I've come from. That's what I'm trying to say. So I did make notes so that if you see me looking down, that is why, because I want to stay on track. I don't want to make this video so long that people don't watch it, but I don't want to forget pertinent information either. So here we go. I posted a photo. I'll go ahead and throw the photo up here. My highest weight to my lightest weight, and the post would be entirely too long in my opinion. I know personally when I'm on Instagram, like if you write a paragraph or something, then I'll read it, but if it's forever long, I'm not interested in reading it. I would rather watch a video, so I decided that that's the way that I would do it. 20 years ago, I weighed 260 pounds. It's possible that I weighed more, but that's the last number that I saw on the scale, because I started when I would go to the doctor or whatever. I didn't stand on the scale at home first and foremost, but when I would go to the doctor, I would just turn my head, and, ignore it. So, how does someone get to be 260 pounds? Well, I had always been, it's the story you hear. I was always a chubby kid, which is true. I was a chubby kid. Really like to eat, and my mom always kept food stocked in the house. Like, she grew up really poor, so for her, keeping food in the house was like, a big thing for her. So we always had food in the house, and sometimes it wasn't the best choices, but we ate really well too. Like, she fed us nourishing foods. It's just the snacks and such, which for me personally, even now, I don't have a lot of control over myself when I eat those types of foods, so I generally won't keep them in my house. If I'm gonna eat something like that, I try to eat it out, because if I bring it into the house, then I'm probably gonna eat it all. That's just kind of how I'm wired. I know there are people who can do that whole thing called moderation. I'm not one of those people. So I had to put my dog in her crate because she likes to bark a whole lot, and she would probably just continue on throughout this video, so I just decided, so that we're not getting sidetracked too terribly much, I would just put her in the crate. So, alright, so yeah, I would overeat on snacks and such, and if that was in the house, like anything sugary or carb heavy, like bread, cakes, things like that. Yeah. So, like I said, I was, a chunky kid. As far as I can remember, looking back at photos, I always had a little bit more weight on me than other kids my age, things of that nature. Well, to make matters worse, when I was 8, my parents got a divorce, and I say parents because it's actually the dad that I grew up with, he was my adopted dad. He adopted me when I was 2, so in my mind, he was my dad. So they got divorced when I was 8, and then which was stressful, but didn't really impact me as much as you would think, until around 2 years later, when I was around 10 years old, and that is when my father that adopted me kind of fell off the face of the earth. So I was dealing with some abandonment issues there. So that left my mom as a single mom. She was taking care of 3 kids all by herself. So she was gone a lot for working purposes. And I was the oldest, so I was in charge of, taking care of my younger sisters. At a certain point, not necessarily at 10, I would come home from school, they would go to a babysitter's. So I would come home from school, I lived out in the country, there really wasn't that much to do, so I would eat and watch TV. And I was a lazy kid too, so it's not like I really wanted to go play that much and whatnot. So, yeah, so I would just eat, and that's the way I comforted myself. I ate out of boredom. I ate when I was sad. I ate when I was happy. I just ate all the time. So, then, the not having my father, I was a daddy's girl 100%. So dealing with the abandonment issues there, and just my mom and I became kind of at each other all the time. Like, I think that, I took out my frustration and anger on her, and probably likewise she did the same, because we were there. I was the oldest, and I was a mouthy child. I kind of gave her a hard time, and so, she's already frustrated and doing the best she can, and then dealing with me. And so anyways, we're at each other's throats a lot. And so I left home, and then that's when I got pregnant at 16. So I was pregnant at 16. Around this time, I was about a size 14 in women's clothing. So I'm a 14, right? So I'm already, thick, I guess you would call it these days. I was overweight. And then I got pregnant on top of it. So yeah, and when I got pregnant, I was, my high school boyfriend, I was living at his house because I left home and I didn't have anywhere else to go. So when I found out that I was pregnant, we weren't even together anymore. So I'm 16, I'm not at home, I'm pregnant. The boy that I'm pregnant by, we ended up getting back together and trying to have a relationship because I was pregnant, and he's to this day a really good man. But that's a very emotional time. So what did I do? I ate, which it didn't help that his mom also managed a McDonald's. So we had fast food all the time. It was kind of like a fast food household, and I would just eat fast food. I would eat the food at school, like the school food, and I ate all the time, and I ate a lot. I do remember that when I was pregnant, thinking that it was kind of a pass, and I was already an emotional eater anyway, and then this is a very emotional time in my life. Teenager hormones on top of pregnancy hormones, it just is what it is at that point. So that being said, I gained 60 pounds while I was pregnant, and I was already like at 200 pounds when I got pregnant. So that is how I got to the weight of 260 pounds. And I didn't stay that weight for very long. I would say maybe 2 years I was that heavy, like morbidly obese. And really I just started, I hit a rock bottom at that point, because I was so sad, and all I would do is cry. At this point, when my son was 9 months old, I had moved back into my mother's house, and my family wasn't always very nice about my weight. Like, if we would get into if I would get into an argument with anybody, it was the first thing that came up. Like, I don't understand that, because when I was fat, like, I didn't need you or anyone else to tell me I was fat. I was very aware that I was fat. Every time I sat down, every time I stood up, every time I looked in the mirror, every time I went in public, every time a picture was taken, every time anything was done, that was the first thought on my mind. Oh my God, are people are going to judge me because I'm so fat? That's how I felt. So, yeah, so I remember one day, I just remember I was getting dressed for school, to go to school, and nothing that I had fit anymore. And my baby was already born, had been born, and I didn't really there was no excuse because after you have a baby, I just had a baby. But no, I remember sitting on the edge of my bed and crying because I didn't have anything to wear to school, and my sweatpants that I always wore were too tight too. So I was like, oh, this has to end. The biggest size I remember buying were 20, I want to say 26, 28 were the largest sizes that I remember buying. And back then, there wasn't all of these stores that catered to those sizes. To my best memory was Cato's, which is still around, but Cato was where I shopped because that was the only place that carried sizes big enough to accommodate me. So living in that body was really hard, and I knew I needed to do something, but I didn't know what I needed to do. I had no education on the topic. The internet at the time was so new that AOL. I had AOL. I thought that, I actually swear to you, I thought that was the internet. I didn't have any idea that there was a World Wide Web. You could search for things. There definitely was no Google. And I just felt lost. And my mom, she was trying to help. She'd be like, come to the gym with me, because my mom went to the gym. She'd try to get me to come to the gym with her. She would hear things on the radio. Oh, try this diet and try that diet. And she didn't know either. It's not like, my mom's a naturally thin woman, never been overweight a day in her life. So she didn't know. All she knew was like, eat less and move more, which, yeah, but in my mind, that translated to just quit eating and exercise yourself to death, which I didn't have it in me to do that. Like, I'm not one of those people that can just starve themselves. But being that size was very painful. I do remember a lot of it, I feel like because it was so long ago, yeah, not only has it been 20 years ago that I lived in such a large body, but because that was such a trying time in my life and traumatic time in my life, like, I don't know if I've blocked a lot of it out, but I do remember just nothing fit me. I was always tugging and pulling on my clothes. I was very self-conscious, and I really didn't, I would wear as much clothes as I could all the time, even long sleeves. I would want to wear long sleeves in the summertime because I was so big, like, I wanted to hide the size of my forearms. I remember that specifically, like, even wanting to hide the size of my forearms. And, like, when you're big like that, most of the time you have a belly that, like, pours over and hangs. Like, the underneath of my belly would crack and bleed, and at the time I thought it was like pus, but this is gross, I'm sorry, but it's a reality of when you're bigger, like, this is what happens. It would just it was leaking lymphatic fluid. I know that now, but then I thought, I didn't know. It was just like, felt sticky. So you always have to put powder. There would be rashes under my arms all the time from just because they're so big, and just when you move around, rashes on my thighs all the time. Just, it was a miserable way to live. So finally, I was like, I got to do something about this, and decided that up here that I was going to lose weight. And so what motivated me was, after my son was born, I got the Depo-Provera shot, and that shot did not go well for me. I didn't lose any weight. Coming out of the hospital, I didn't lose any weight after my baby was born. It made absolutely no sense to me how I could stay the same weight. But regardless, once I decided, okay, I'm not doing this shot anymore, I instantly started losing weight after got off the Depo-Provera shot. So I was like, oh, awesome. I'm gonna keep this ball rolling. And I don't remember, I think maybe I wore a size 40 in men's because I like to wear men's jeans because it was the 90s and the grunge era, and that was very much my thing. So I remember being a size 40 in men's, and then after I got off the Depo-Provera shot, very quickly I dropped down to a 36. That's 4 sizes, so that really motivated me to, okay, let's do better. I at least want to get back down to a size 14. You know, that was my goal. So I started drinking nothing but water. I wouldn't drink sodas or anything anymore. So that was the first thing I did. Drink nothing but water. More weight started falling off. Perfect. Stop eating fast food. So I wouldn't eat fast food anymore. And if I did eat out or whatever, I would try to get whatever grilled option or a salad or just anything other than what I had been eating. Once I turned 18 at this point, so my son was born when I was 16. Here we are 2 years down the line. I had already lost some weight, and I started going to this bar or this club in town. 2 different ones were in the town that I lived in, with my best friend and my sister. We went every time the doors were open. No, we could not drink. My sister could. So my sister was like, it was my older sister. So I was her designated driver. So she was like, come on, let's go. And of course, my best friend, we just wanted to go out and dance and meet guys. Like, that's what we wanted to do. So we started going out, and we were dancing all the time. And then next thing you know, I was buying size 12s, and my goal was a size 14. So I was like, feeling like, yeah, you know, I look good. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. I lost even more weight, and I think I got down to a size 11 was the smallest I got. And then here I am, 22, size 11, and I get pregnant again with my daughter. And so I got pregnant again, and 70 pounds later, but this time it was so different because I did not go on birth control directly after she was born, because I had already learned that birth control did not agree well with me. Hormonal birth control did not agree well with me at all. And so, but after I had her, like, the weight just started falling off. The weight that I gained with her just fell off. I don't know the differences between the 2 pregnancies, other than the fact that I did not go immediately on birth control. So after my daughter was born, she was about 3 months old, and someone had called me a fat bitch. And so that moment, it hurt my feelings so bad, because I just had a baby 3 months ago, and I was already back down to the size that I was before I had the baby. So I thought I was doing great, and I thought that I looked great. And for someone to call me that, and to be called fat my whole life, something inside of me just like switched, like it flipped a switch inside of me. And I was like, today will be the last day anybody ever calls me fat. And so I got my taxes back that year. I drove to the local gym, which was Gold's Gym, ironically, and paid for the entire year. And the rest is history. That's how I got from 260 pounds down to, after I joined that gym, I had been going for a while. I eventually got down to a size 7, which is where I stayed for the longest time until I found bodybuilding. So yeah, that's my story, and I am going to make another video about like my fitness journey. Like, okay, yes, I joined that gym, and kind of how I got into fitness, some of the things that I was doing, and because that was a very long road. I started going to the gym in 2003, and I did not start lifting weights or bodybuilding until 2009. So there was a lot of fuckery, that, just to put it the way that it is, that transpired between 2003 and 2009. So I'll make a separate video for that. Yeah, but I just wanted to tell the story behind the photos of like, how does someone get in that position, and how I crawled my way out of it. And yeah, so I'm just gonna leave it here because I don't want it to be forever and a day long. But as you can see, that post would have been way too long to kind of like just explain, because I did not want to just put that picture up there as a, hey, look at me, look what I did. No, I wanted people to realize this was 20 years ago, and that if I was able to I really want to inspire people to know that if I was able to do that then, if I was able to get the weight to come down then, with far less resources and science than we have now, then anybody watching this who feels in that space where you're hopeless and you just have so much weight on you and you just think like, oh my God, I'm hopeless. You're not, because there are people who have been through it who can help you. I'm one of those. So if you're someone who struggles with your weight and just feel kind of hopeless and don't know which way to go, what way to turn, feel free to leave comments. DM me. I'll put my Instagram and my Facebook up on the screen here. You're more than welcome to DM me, and we can talk. We can talk about what you're going through and small changes that maybe you can make today that will add up to huge differences down the line. Like, never in a million years would I have thought just drinking water. That's the only change I made. I didn't change how I was eating or anything until that one thing worked. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, let's stop doing this. The next thing, fast food. Let's stop eating fast food or fried foods. Let's stop doing that and see what happens. It was just little by little by little by little, and it added up to something huge. And then now look at my life. It's vastly different. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that story. Hopefully it came across in a way that makes sense to people. And if not, I tried. But yeah, so if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to talk, hit me up. And you don't have to be 260 pounds. You don't have to be morbidly obese. You could want to lose 10 pounds and be like, what do I do? I feel hopeless, and I'll be happy to help. So yeah, but with that, I'll see you in the next video. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you.